And tonight on Joy News Prime, Dr. Bawumia blames external factors and the opposition NDC for government's decision to go to the IMF.
That roofs your house, and the roof collapses because there's a tornado and a storm which has blown away roofs and windows and walls of many houses. Will you blame the carpenter? Will you blame the carpenter?
You know, the NDC's General Secretary says the NPP government has lost credibility for blaming John Mahama's administration for Ghana's economic woes.
So if you are running a system where you cannot even trust your leaders, they say this today, tomorrow they say a different thing, then how are we expected to trust in the solutions that they are prescribing?
Also here on Joy News Prime, PTA chairman of Nalerigu Senior High School in the Northeast region calls for the immediate shutdown of the school, fearing students may riot because of the shortage of food.
No food to feed them. If the government has not given them enough food stuff or enough money to buy food stuff, and they cannot get anywhere to buy on credit, the best will be for the authorities to close down the school. When they get food, then they call them back.
Minority members on Parliament's Privileges Committee refute First Deputy Speaker's assertion that the Dome Kwabena seat is automatically vacant, describing it as a mischievous rant.
Nothing could be further from the truth. It's an absolute pathological lie. As we speak, there is no report of the committee. And so I think it is a mischievous rant by somebody who has a fertile imagination for mischief.
And later in the bulletin, artisans and spare part dealers at the Suame magazine in Kumasi protest deteriorated roads in the light industrial area.
No police in free station, but now someone may see how police.
Hello again, thanks for choosing us. This is the home of independent, fearless and credible journalism. Now, the Vice President has blamed government's decision to seek an IMF support program on the opposition NDC and external global factors. Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia said the effects of the banking sector cleanup, the cost of excess capacity charges in the energy sector, the COVID-19 pandemic and the Russia-Ukraine war has resulted in what he describes as a quadruple whammy for the Ghanaian economy. Hence, the IMF program is to seek balance of payment support to bridge the financial gap. The head of the economic management team was speaking at the Accra Business School.
So we had direct COVID-19 expenditures amounting to 12 billion Ghana cedis. We had the banking sector cleanup costs amounting to 25 billion Ghana cedis, and the excess capacity payments amounting to 17 billion Ghana cedis. And the data shows that the three items, when you take COVID, banking sector cleanup, and the excess capacity payments, cumulatively amounted to 54 billion Ghana cedis. And that is the equivalent of $7 billion US dollars. Three items, $7 billion US dollars, that of expenditure which had to be taken. You couldn't say you wouldn't spend to rescue the banking sector because you are in trouble. The economy will collapse. You couldn't say you won't pay excess capacity payments because you have power outages. You couldn't say you wouldn't spend on the COVID because we had a job to save lives. So to put the expenditure on these three items in perspective, it is important to juxtapose it against the total expenditure releases on some of the government's key flagship projects, including the free SHS, the One District, One Factory, Planting for Food and Jobs, Development Authorities, the Ghana Card, Zongo Development Fund, NAPCO, Teacher Training Allowance, Nursing Training Allowance. The data shows that the expenditure on these flagship policies that I've mentioned, the total expenditure by government on these flagship policies over a 5-year period amounted to 15.6 billion Ghana cedis. Ladies and gentlemen, following the Russia-Ukraine war, energy and food prices skyrocketed globally. For many advanced economies, inflation reached 30 and 40-year highs. Inflation in Ghana has increased to 29.8% in June 2022. Global supply chains were disrupted and shipping costs increased by over 1,000%. In fact, ladies and gentlemen, before COVID-19, Ghana was borrowing some $3 billion annually from the international capital market. But following COVID-19, the international capital markets have been largely inaccessible by emerging market countries like Ghana. With the challenges in accessing the international capital market, balance of payment support was needed to bridge this financing gap, stabilize the economy, and create the space to implement structural reforms and restore debt sustainability. And this is really the reason why Ghana had to go to the IMF. I should again note that Ghana has been hit with a quadruple whammy. A quadruple whammy. The energy sector excess capacity payments, banking sector cleanup, COVID-19, and the Russia-Ukraine war. We have been hit by this quadruple whammy. And I say again that if you take out the fiscal impact of this quadruple whammy, Ghana will not be going to the IMF for support because our fiscal.
This is John News Prime with me, and as many news just coming in is that government and organized labor has reached an agreement as far as the cost of living allowance is concerned. Remember that 4 unions are already on a strike, demanding 20% of their base pay to be paid to them as cost of living allowance. We are hearing today from that crucial meeting that was organized today at the Ministry of Health's conference room that the labor unions and government have agreed to a 15% cost of living allowance. We'll be heading there shortly to speak to my colleague Samuel Mbura, who has been monitoring the meeting for us. We'll bring you those details shortly. Well, Samuel Mbura joins us on the line. Sami, you've been at the Health Ministry all day monitoring this meeting between the labor unions and government, which was represented by the Finance Minister, the Employment Minister. We also had the Education Minister there. This follows a directive by President Akufo-Addo to resolve the issues at the labor front. We are hearing today they've agreed to a 15%, which is 5% shy of what they earlier demanded. Walk us through the details.
Agreed. A COLA of 15%. 15%. And we now are going to ask all the workers who are on strike, especially in the education sector, to go back to work. We have the union leaders of all the teacher unions here, the universities. We also know that a number of workers have threatened and they have announced that they are going to strike from tomorrow, some from 19th, others from next week. They are all here with us. And with this agreement, we are calling on them to call off all the planned action. We have the teacher unions here with me. I would like them to say a word to their members. So this is what.
Ernest, the one who has just done addressing the media, we know, is the General Secretary of the TUC, calling off their strike, and Secretary General of the TUC announcing the COLA of 15%. But let's listen to the teacher unions also addressing the media.
To organized labor. And this evening, the negotiation between the government side and organized labor has been concluded. So for and on behalf of all the teacher unions in the pre-tertiary education, including the Ghana National Association of Teachers, the National Association of Graduate Teachers, we have the Teachers and Educational Workers Union, we have the Coalition of Concerned Teachers Ghana. We hereby direct and ask all our members and wish also to inform them that effective July 14th, today, 2022, in the year of our Lord, we have called off the strike that we embarked upon on the 4th of July. So we thank you all for your support. May the good Lord bless each and every one of us. Thank you very much, and God bless you for coming.
Thank you.
So you just heard Mr. Thomas Musa from NAT declaring their support for whatever that has transpired here. So the Minister for Labour is now coming to address the media. So let's listen to the Minister.
Please. So what do we? Okay, for the purposes of the ceremony, let's do it and then later. Is the press ready for us? Good evening, everybody. We have invited you here to brief you on the outcome of negotiations between government and organized labor that actually started last Friday and has come to an end this evening. On the government side, we have the Minister for National Security here. We have the Minister for Education here, Minister for Finance here, Minister for Information also here, and then we have the Deputy Ministers of Finance, Honorable Abna Osei Asare, and Deputy Minister for Employment and Labor Relations, Honorable Bright Rekubrobe here. On the labor side, we have organized labor led by the Secretary General of TUC and almost every labor organization within the public space also being represented here. The technical wing of government that is responsible for salary negotiations, Fair Wages and Salary Commission, actually led the deliberations on the part of government. At the end of the negotiations, this is a common communique that we have, and I will read it as it is. Agreement on cost of living allowance, COLA. This agreement is made this 14th day of July 2022 between the government of Ghana, represented by the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission, Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Employment and Labor Relations, Ministry of Education, and Ministry of National Security, hereinafter called the employer of the one part, and organized labor comprising identifiable workers' unions and associations within the public service of Ghana, hereinafter called labor, on the other part. Whereas the parties negotiated on the cost of living allowance for workers in the public service and reached consensus for 2022 as follows. Terms of agreement. The cost of living allowance, COLA, will be paid at a rate of 15% of base pay. That the effective date for payment of the COLA is 1st July 2022. That all industrial actions
underway and threats of same will be called off immediately, and that labor will return to work forthwith. In witness whereof the parties herein have set their names and hands this 14th day of July 2022. So on the part of government, we have Honorable Ignatius Bafuwa, Minister for Employment and Labor Relations. We have Honorable Ken Ofori Atta signing also for government, and Mr. Engineer Benjamin Atta, Chief Executive of Fair Wages and Salaries Commission, signing for government. Then on the part of labor, we have Dr. Anthony Yauba, Secretary General of TUC, signing for organized labor, and witnessed by Perpetua Ofori Ampofu, President, Ghana Registered Nurses and Midwives Association, also signing for organized labor. So first, we will do the signing for you to capture so that it will not be seen as if we just read it and that it has not been authenticated. So I will sign first. Honorable Minister, you sign. Yeah. And then Benjamin Atta. Okay. Dr. Yauba. Maybe before we sign up, I want to take this opportunity to thank our father, the father of the nation, His Excellency the President. If you recall, on Saturday at the Eid Festival, he made a public pronouncement that he was urging the government negotiation team to sit down with organized labor and ensure that we reach agreement on this subject matter. It is on the back of that the government team, starting from last Tuesday. Yes, starting from last Tuesday, entered into this conclave, and that we have come to an end of this. So we want to thank him for giving us the necessary backing and the courage. And then we also want to thank especially the negotiating team from the government side, my colleagues, who naturally some of these things will not be part of their traditional business, for coming all the way and supporting us throughout. We are so very grateful to them. The Minister for Information, who has been very supportive and been doing most of our communication works for us. Honorable Minister, we are so grateful to you. But I also want to extend a hand of appreciation to organized labor. We began this with a spirit of cooperation, and we have ended with a spirit of cooperation. And one thing which was quite evident in all our discussions was that we all wanted to protect the integrity of our country. And I want to believe that we are going to achieve that by this feat that we have accomplished. As organized labor has called, we want to add our voice to what they have said. We want to entreat all striking workers to go back to work beginning today, so that we will also have peace at the industrial level. So on this note, I want to thank you, also the press, for following up on this issue and educating the public on what was happening. Thank God we have come to an end. Thank you.
That's a live feed from the Ministry of Health. You had there the Employment Minister, Ignatius Bafuewa, speaking to the media in the presence of organized labor after they reached an agreement. 15% of their base pay to be paid to them as cost of living allowance, effective July 1. Remember that organized labor and all the other unions were demanding an initial payment of 20% of their base pay as cost of living allowance to cushion them in these difficult times. Now, from what we're gleaning from the meeting, government has started from a point of 10%, which was met with stiff opposition by the labor unions, and then they came to a compromise of 15%, which has now been agreed upon effective July 1. You had earlier had the teacher unions who are already on a strike, directing their members to resume work, and of course the strike has been effectively called off. Yesterday when we spoke to the Ghana Medical Association, they had indicated that once government makes an offer, they will be in the position to consider and compromise where necessary. Well, there you have it now. That compromise has been reached, and of course the strikes have been called off, and hopefully from today we should have some calm on the labor front. But let's return to the IMF and Dr. Bawumia's delivery today at the Accra Business School. You had him blame the NDC and external factors for the current decision to seek an IMF support program. He's meanwhile asking Ghanaians to brace themselves for tougher times, even as government works to turn the situation around.
While we hope for a quick end to the war, we must understand that things could get worse before they get better. We have
a directive will also be given at that level. Should we finish
because we just don't know when this war is going to end. The major lesson of the last 2 years is that we have to be more self-reliant. It is important that we take decisions that will inure to the benefit of the country, regardless of whether we are going to the IMF for a program or not. Regardless, we have to take the decisions that will help Ghana. The immediate task is to restore fiscal and debt sustainability, and these will be through revenue and expenditure measures and structural reforms. There's no way of going about that. We should also try and curtail non-concessional borrowing. That has to be curtailed. The reliance on international capital markets to fill the financing gap of about 3 billion annually exposed the vulnerability of the economy once the capital markets shut down to emerging markets.
So that's Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia speaking today at the Accra Business School, essentially blaming 4 factors for the government's decision to head to the IMF. First, he says, of course, the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as the Ukraine-Russian war, and then the issues that have to do with payment of excess capacity charges in the energy sector and the cost of the banking sector cleanup are essentially to blame for government's decision to head to the IMF. You heard them say that Ghanaians should brace themselves for tougher times, even as they work to turn the situation around. We're able to speak to the minorities ranking member on the Finance Committee. We don't have him yet. Once we do, we'll bring you their reaction to this developing story. But the General Secretary of the NDC, Johnson Asiedu Nketia, says government has lost credibility for blaming the John Mahama administration for Ghana's economic woes. Reacting to the Vice President, Mr. Nketia said the Vice President, together with the economic management team, ought to resign by now for not fulfilling their promise.
Mahama didn't come back in 2020 or 2019 to do anything. You understand? So if after 6 years in office, you are still blaming predecessors, it means that you have no clue as to why you went into the elections to become a leader in the first place.
Were you expecting an apology from the Vice President to start off with?
Well, the person doesn't want to even admit where he's wrong. So you can't even proceed to be talking about apologies. You just leave him like a donkey who is crying that grass is blue. Because every Ghanaian knows that, you know, he has lost credibility. And if we were in a well-functioning democracy, people like that should be leaving their offices.
You feel the vice president should be resigning by now?
Because the things he has said, you know, politics or democracy is about trust in our leadership. So if you are running a system where you cannot even trust your leaders, they say this today, tomorrow they say a different thing. Then how are we expected to trust in the solutions that they are prescribing?
The feeling of some is
because you need to accept, the diagnosis, the causes of a disease before you take the medication. But if the person is talking about causes which are not actually the causes, it means that he will be prescribing the wrong medication for you. So that is why we have been saying that, look, the very set of economic managers who brought us into this mess cannot be relied upon to take us out of the mess. So before any IMF program or whatever can be swallowed by Ghanaians with all its hardship, Ghanaians must know that we have a new set of people whose word they can trust.
And you go to the extent of asking the vice president to resign. Some say this is usual of any other politician. You promise, and you fail. This is just one of such
when
cases.
you say something is black and it turns out to be white too many times, you have lost credibility, and you help yourself by resigning from the economic management team. He shouldn't be there at all. You understand? So because we are in a certain mess, and we have been told that we are bringing the IMF to help us to implement certain austerity measures that will take us out of the mess. This austerity will involve hardship and others. So you need leaders who will be able to convince the population that, look, these are the right set of measures that will take us out of where we are. And those leaders must be trustworthy. The people must have trust in them. So if you are dealing with leaders in whom the people have lost trust, the people will not accept it. And that is why you are seeing the turbulence you are seeing in the economy now, the labor front and the other thing, because the simple fact is that they can no longer trust in the word of government.
Now, former Chief of Staff under the Kufuor administration is calling on the Finance Minister, Kenneth Weata, to resign. Kojo Manu is of the firm conviction that the utterances of the Finance Minister before government decided to seek the intervention of the International Monetary Fund makes him unfit to continue with the role. He is not alone in this demand, as several, including the minority in Parliament, are also asking same. Speaking on Joy News, Mr. Manu said he is concerned about the performance of some of the ministers, but insists a reshuffle is the sole prerogative of the president.
Actually, it's a prerogative of the president to decide whether a person is efficient or not. But even if you sit out, if you are not in there, you'll be able to know whether a minister is performing well or not. All of us sitting out, not out of government. I believe if you ask a Ghanaian, they'll be able to tell you this minister, Minister A or Minister B must go, because we don't see effectiveness of such a minister. So it concerns me, and I believe it is something which must be done. But it's the prerogative of the president. If he believes that all these people are working well, fine. But a listening president also be trying to find out even what the people think. You see, the national security also helps the president, because they listen to people's concerns, and these concerns are conveyed to the president. So it's left to the president to make his mind.
If you had the opportunity to advise the president, what would you advise?
I would advise him to drop some of the ministers and maybe bring in some of.
Do you mind sharing with us some of them he should drop? Who would you want dropped?
No, it's not fair for me to sit on. Honestly, if I were the finance minister, this is a question of President dropping. From my utterances, and then what is happening, I will just go, Mr. President, thank you so much. I think it's best for me to sit back for another person to take over. That would be my personal decision. That would be my decision. But I'm not going to tell any president to drop a finance minister or any minister. That should be left to the president. He knows what is happening.
This is John News Prime with me, Ernest Kojo. We're taking a break. When we return, the minority members on Parliament's Privileges Committee refute the First Deputy Speaker's assertion that the Dome Kwabena seat is automatically vacant, describing it as a mischievous rant.
Nothing could be further from the truth. It's an absolute pathological lie. As we speak, there is no report of the committee. And so I think it is a mischievous rant by somebody who has a fertile imagination for mischief.
Thanks for staying with us here on Joy News Prime. The minority MPs on the Privileges Committee are on a warpath with the chairman of the committee, Joseph Osei-Wusu, for saying that the seat of the Dome Kwabena MP, Sarah Adwoa-Safo, is automatically vacant. The MP had failed to appear before the committee, despite the committee's insisting that they had issued all avenues, or they had actually used all avenues to reach out to her. After deliberations, Joe Osei-Wusu spoke exclusively to Joy News and claimed that the clerk must write to the EC to declare Sarah Adwoa-Safo's seat vacant.
Said her every opportunity that there was. We have advertised, we've sent letters to her registered address in Parliament, we've posted some on her known social media handles, we've advertised in the national newspapers on she did not appear before the committee. So the responsibility is on her to take advantage of the opportunity and explain why she was absent for 15 sittings without permission. She did not take the advantage of the opportunities given her. So her vacation of Parliament is a matter of course. It's automatic. The committee doesn't have to say that leaves, no.
It doesn't look like she's willing to vacate her seat. What then happens in Parliament?
Well, it does not lie in your mouth, the person who has fallen foul of the law.
So the Speaker or the plenary or the clerk is supposed to now declare that seat vacant? What exactly will happen?
In accordance with the law, it is for the clerk to declare or to inform the Electoral Commission that the vacancy has occurred. That is what the Constitution says. That's what our report will reflect to the House.
But addressing journalists in Parliament, member of the committee, Alhaji ABF Hussaini, said the committee had reached no such decision.
Our attention has been drawn to a report in sections of the media to the effect that the clerk of Parliament has been authorized to issue a statement to the effect that the position of Honorable Adwoa-Safo has been declared vacant, on the basis of which there should be a by-election, and that is the recommendation of the committee. Nothing could be further from the truth. It's an absolute pathological lie. And I want to stand on behalf of the NDC members of the committee and state the facts of the committee as they are. As we speak, there is no report of the committee. The committee has not put together a report. Not at all. You know, so how can you have a landlord when there's no house? How can there be a story of a report when there's no report? Mm-hmm. There is no such report as I speak to you now. Because as a member of the committee, if the report is put together, I'll be privy to the report. We'll also get it through our ranking member and his deputy. So take it from me that the authentic story of the Privileges Committee as we speak now is that there is no report on the three members that Mr. Speaker referred to us. It's true that, yes, we've met, we've deliberated, we have met two of the three. But we have not issued a report as we speak. Let me also say in categorical terms that on the issue of Adwasafu, the committee made it very clear, even though we are not constituted into a report yet.
Now, ABF Hussein insists the committee cannot hold judgment over a person they were not able to reach.
I want to state it on record that the committee did make some approaches to enable us get to her. But even the clerk of the committee made it abundantly clear that he cannot say for certain that she had been, the correspondence that Parliament sought to get over to her had actually reached her. So in unequivocal terms, the committee never, ever, at any point, at any material moment, made any such attribution. And so it is important for us to disabuse our minds that any such report exists for even to be. And let me quote Standing Order 161. Standing Order 161, which governs the regulations of committees in this House, indicates that any recommendation of the committee will have to be put before the plenary. Any recommendation by a committee, no committee is an island unto itself, or is a law unto itself, or has authority unto itself to constitute. When it is constituted, it takes decisions and then it implements. The committee.
Let's turn our attention to education now. The chairman of the Parent-Teacher Association at the Nalerigu Senior High School in the Northeast region, Dutz Thompson, has called for the immediate shutdown of the school. According to him, senior high schools in the region are witnessing acute food shortages, a situation he feared could cause the students to riot. He said authorities must allow the students to go home to protect the school property.
For the 4 years, I believe that if the children did not have food even this morning, they would have rioted. I know my students. That is a very deprived community. Our students are made up of people who are coming from this region. Majority of the students are coming from this region. Our parents or their parents are not able to provide them with any provision. I mean, like food. They themselves are even struggling at home to eat. So if the students do not get one meal, if the school were to run short and not able to provide them with either a breakfast or a lunch or a supper, it's just that there's no food to give to them. Trust me, they will riot. So as for the strike, we don't know when it will end, and we know it can end today or tomorrow. But if
now, artisans and spare part dealers at the Suame magazine in Kumasi have staged a demonstration to protest the deteriorated roads in the light industrial area. The section of the dusty Suame Macro Road was blocked to traffic for over 2 hours by the protesters. The road upgrade has been abandoned for some months to the displeasure of residents, traders and artisans. Now Jima has more.
Throughout Thursday, some of the artisans and spare parts dealers here at Suame magazine had to abandon their job. For what reason? To protest against the poor nature of roads within the enclave. The main Suame to Macro Road have for months been milled, ready for upgrade. But unfortunately, the project has stalled. Now, the artisans say this has affected their work.
For 5
months, we have had to contend with dust. We do not make enough when we come to work, and now our health is threatened due to dust. We haven't seen the factories and dams promised by the government. See what they are now doing to us. The majority leader, who is our MP, only comes around to campaign, sharing money to drunkards for their votes. When election is due, our MP will organize football competition, offering 3,000 cedis to the winner. He neglects all developmental projects after election. The MPP government keeps deceiving us. For 4 months, our wells are locked up. We can't display them due to the dust.
So I want you quite now, my young. No police in free station, but now so one man see how yeah, that's why no police
Their actions today affected flow of traffic. It took police intervention to ensure that the roadblocks are removed for free flow of traffic. Leadership of the artisans and spare parts dealers here at the Suame magazine have been pleading with their members to halt the protest.
You're watching Joy News Prime with me, Ernest Kojo Manu.